How's everyone doing? This is Game Week 34 Fantasy Preview. So I'm just going to go through 3 to 4 sections, I guess. One being future planning for Game Week 34, so the following week. Players to target for this week. Then Captaincy for Game Week 33. And then just thoughts on my team, what I'm planning to do. Okay, let's go. So Game Week 34. So let's just have a look. Why is that important? It's because we've got another double game week. So we have these 6 teams doubling: Liverpool, Fulham, Man City, West Ham, Brighton, United. So by now, I would have thought many of people would have used their wild card free hits, etc. So are just using their free transfers to get as many teams or as many players from these teams. Obviously, if you've got free hit and wildcard still, this is probably a really good week to do it. You can just get so many double game week players, and there's some of the bigger teams: Liverpool, Man City, United. So I've got one free transfer for Game Week 33, and then obviously we'll have one free transfer for Game Week 34. So I've got 2 transfers to essentially play with for these 2 weeks. When and where we'll use them, I don't know. So I think all managers should have a look at that team and then decide if I can save that transfer. If my team is looking good this week, or I can afford to save a transfer, then do it, because I think it'd be very useful to have 2 transfers for this game week. Target these players from these teams, and if you took a hit, you're doing it so you say you're targeting 2 Liverpool attackers, but you need to gain some money from, say, a Kane, something I'm thinking of. Then you could do the 3 transfers and then you take a -4 there, but there is purpose for it rather than just taking a -4 for just a single game week player. But I'll explain a bit more what I mean in terms of my thinking. But I think if you can, I would try to save your transfer. However, Game Week 33 is actually it's a bit of a tricky one, I'd say. Why is that? Is because a lot of us will have certain Arsenal assets. I actually only have one, but just in general, it's quite a tricky week because Man City are playing Arsenal, Spurs are playing Man United. Which means we'll just have to plan ahead, and the double game week players we'll target from 34, they potentially have a much harder fixture than you'd want. So if you're targeting, so let's just recap which teams have double game week, has a double game week in Game Week 34. These are the 6: Liverpool, Man City, Fulham, West Ham, Brighton, United. But if you look at the following week, and realistically you're targeting maybe Liverpool, City, United, Brighton. West Ham has some merit, but we have to look at their actual double, which is West Ham and Crystal Palace. So West Ham as well, but I think unless you got Pereira, he's on the bench and you want to, I wouldn't go in investing any of the Fulham players. So you've got 5 teams to target. But if we look at Game Week 33, West Ham playing Liverpool. So you're highly likely not going to want to bring in a West Ham player for your team this week. City are playing Arsenal, so you can definitely still bring in City players, but you'd want maybe an easier fixture. But the way City have been playing, and obviously Arsenal struggling defensively, at least for attacking assets from Man City, they're probably worth going for, to be honest, being objective there. Then if you look at Man United playing Spurs at home, which Spurs have been pretty shaky, to be honest, but it's still a tough opposition. Spurs and United both within that top 4 race. So, and also aside from Rashford, it's who you'd potentially target. So it's a bit difficult. Liverpool has then become suddenly the team everyone to target. They've been scoring so many goals. Salah has basically returned back to the Salah of what he was before. I mean, he was scoring good at the start of the season, but now he's consistently getting returns. And Jota has suddenly scored 4 goals in 2 games, and maybe one of the top striking picks. You never know Jota though because of injuries, but then Firmino's out, so that's less competition there. But Nunez, if you think he might start, ahead of Jota for if it's a double game week. Maybe Jota won't start twice. Who knows? But Liverpool have then become, because of game week 34, Liverpool become the team to target if you're trying to get a transfer that's good for this week, game week 33, as well as for the double game week, where they will have 2 games. And playing Spurs and I believe Fulham, both at home, they're probably the number 1 team to pick to target in terms of their assets. Maybe City actually, just because how good they are, but then rotation plays a factor there. So of the teams, Brighton. So Brighton also become another team that if you want some double game weekers, cheap options as well. They play Nottingham Forest this week, so that's a good fixture, and also you get a double for the week after, and I believe Brighton should get another double game week, or has that even been confirmed already? Yep. So they're doubling in 36 as well, and 37. So Brighton assets, they're just going to tick along, having so many fixtures. I think they're ones to target. So I think it was important to set out what type of teams are doubling game week 34, because then it factors in the players I think you should target, which I'm going to move on to shortly. But just final thoughts would be Liverpool and what game week? Yeah, Liverpool and Brighton seem very good teams to target if you're trying to target the double game weeks. City as well are good just because City are so good. And then United, I guess less so. West Ham, less so because of Liverpool. And then if you genuine to target Fulham players, against Villa is not the best fixture either though. So, okay, so let's have a look at my watch list and see what players I'm considering, or I think that are good to target. So, okay. So start obviously is, if we're looking at goalkeepers, I just think Liverpool, just with their running. Defensively, they're still not been great. I'm going to be honest, actually. But, they haven't kept a clean sheet in the last... Well, they've kept 1 clean sheet in the past 5 games. But then before that, we see a little run here where they kept 5 clean sheets in a row. So basically, and also with their run-in, so West Ham, Spurs, not as good, but then this is part of a double game week. So you're banking on Fulham to be a clean sheet maybe. Then Brentford, Leicester, Villa, Southampton. To us, not the best teams if you're banking on clean sheets, but they are generally quite a good fixture. And because they need top 4, if you want one of their defensive assets, but want guaranteed starts, but can't afford, say, Trent, Robertson's basically guaranteed, but he's a bit more expensive, and also Simcast could take a game from him. Now, Alisson could be an option. I wouldn't go for him, but I think he is a very fair option. Ederson then becomes... But Alisson, what would be good is for this week against West Ham. Ederson is interesting because I think, depending how most team setups would have been, you'd have quite a good backup keeper. So imagine I didn't have Ederson, but I had Raya, which is who I replaced him with, or who I replaced Ederson with. Ederson replaced Raya in my team. Then you could have brought Ederson in and just start Kepa, or just start Ederson, whichever you believe. But what you're doing there is banking in the transfer. However, if you're not actually starting him, there's no point doing that. But let's say if you've got 2 transfers and you want to use one, then you could bring in Ederson, put him on a bench, and then next week you'll have Fulham away, West Ham at home. Great fixtures for clean sheets. Low upside, but also, I guess, potentially high ceiling. So, okay, but let's have a look at the defenders. And I think in terms of as an FPL asset, and I guess on the pitch as well, just because his position has tweaked slightly, Alexander-Arnold has returned back to his at least attacking best. So we can look at the assists. He's basically had an assist in the last 3 weeks. 1 assist against Nottingham Forest, 2 against Leeds, 1 against Arsenal. And if you look at the XA numbers, they are ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You need the clean sheets to back it up though. But Nottingham Forest, West Ham next, then Spurs and Fulham are pretty good. And Not to forget, you got 3 home fixtures in a row after this fixture. I think if money isn't an issue, Trent is probably a very good option to target. If, as we said, Brighton players are a good cheap alternative to say a Liverpool, then Estupiñán becomes a mini Trent. Got a good fixture against Nottingham Forest in Game Week 33, and then a decent double Wolves and Man United. So if we have a look, his expected assists, and obviously against Chelsea wasn't that great, but you've got a 0.5, 0.14, 0.14, 0.28. Generally, you can see the attacking threat that Estupiñán has. Actually, against Chelsea, he had a lot more goal threat, interestingly enough. But in general, it just shows that you're banking also maybe on an attacking return as well as clean sheets from Estupiñán. Dunk could be an option just through set pieces. Haven't checked his sort of expected attacking return metrics, but he can also be an option. But Estupiñán probably is more likely to get return. So those were the defenders, and obviously so far, and it will continue, I'm essentially just targeting players that are going to have a double in Game Week 34. So let's look at the midfielders. So most people may have him already. I don't. Is Salah. Salah, he has scored in 4 in the last 5 games. Scored 1 against Nottingham Forest, 2 against Leeds. Expected goal involvements has been really good, 0.74, 0.67, and most of that goal involvement is through like XG. So like he's scoring goals, not just he's not like assisting a lot, and just generally very good numbers. And he's definitely had an uptick recently. There's a few pens in there, to be fair, like with the Bournemouth one, he missed a pen here, and then with the Arsenal one, missed a pen as well. But you can see he's back to a player where we do need him in our team. In general, well, if you have Kane, then your money of Salah has gone to Kane. So it's just about, do you want to keep Kane or not? But Kane, he's been so consistent as well. So it is a tough choice, but it's the double game week bias that you're feeding into, and you got to need Salah. So just looking at some other midfielders, and we'll start with Grealish first, and then we'll talk about the Brighton boys. Grealish generally his minutes seems really good, and then has returned in the last 3 games. One thing to say is Foden is back now. Let's just check that actually. Foden is back with them battling for maybe a quadruple. Is there going to be more rotation? Most likely. And so can you even bank on any City player playing twice? Aside from maybe De Bruyne, Grealish is maybe an up there, but with Foden coming back. And Haaland, I guess. But then Alvarez. Minutes, Pep Roulette is a thing. We all know this. So you have to just be careful if you bring in a Man City player that they may not start. But Grealish seems to be the standout pick recently in midfield. Mahrez just scored a hat-trick in the FA Cup yesterday, but his minutes feels less certain than Grealish's. Foden could be an interesting differential pick where most people won't have him just because he was injured, and he could, in 1 week, return like a 15-pointer. So really just depends, but yeah, a Man City midfielder is not definitely bad, especially because Arsenal have been conceding quite a few goals recently. As much as an Arsenal fan, want Arsenal to win so badly, but conceding 7 goals in 3 games playing against City is a scary prospect, and for FPL, a Man City attacking midfielder, you should be put off with them playing Arsenal, but it will be a good game for the neutrals in general. So Brighton, we've already established they're playing Nottingham Forest, so that's a good team to target for attacking returns. And Matoma, if you just look at his returns, like the last 2 weeks, but against Chelsea and Tottenham, understandably so, haven't returned. But before that, Bournemouth, They get 7 points. Brentford 10 points, 6, 6, 13. He's just being so consistent, delivering good points and such a good value at 5.6. McAllister is the same. Less consistent, but in terms of returning attacking returns, you can see the goals scored, scoring against Brentford, Leeds, West Ham. He's on penalties. That's the main thing of his appeal, and he's been playing up. And if you're a XG nerd, then he's who you would want to back up because his numbers have been ridiculous. They have been. Will he always keep up in his high position? I think he will. So he's just a very good option to have. Solly March, I haven't added him because, well, he's on my team already. Guess Matoma is as well, but he also is a very good option. I don't think you can go necessarily wrong. It's just whether your timing is right. I feel like Matoma, and just maybe because of the penalty pill, McAllister could be the order I'd go for, which is Matoma, McAllister, March. But if I have March, I'm not going to go try to get McAllister. Forwards. So just because of his form, he hasn't got double game week, but the way Watkins has been scoring, I've added him. He's playing Fulham. Great fixture. He is playing United in game week 34, which most likely I will bench him for. But so would you want to bring him in when you've got double game week players on the horizon? Not sure, but his form is just ridiculous. Jota. So touched upon him a bit before, but back-to-back games of 2 goals. Seems like he's been starting very well in terms of getting good solid minutes. Firmino is out for the next 2 games. So, well, West Ham and at least Spurs, I guess. So he seems to be locked in, at least getting most minutes. Probably won't finish games, but, well, when they've been attacking, Jota's been part of lots of their goals. He's a forward now, which is probably not great in terms of FPL scoring, but still bringing big scores, 13, 16. The issue always, I guess less so because of Firmino, but will there be a lot of rotation? Not necessarily rotation, but Liverpool do have choices in attack. They have Salah, who you'd think will start both games. Let's just focus on a double game week their double game week. Salah will start because he's their best player. And then you have Jota, Firmino, but then you're mixing that up because Firmino is now injured, but you can have Jota there and Gakpo. But you also have Diaz come back now and Nunes. So of the other 2 front 3 spots, and maybe even Salah gets rested, right? But you've got Nunes, Jota, Gakpo, those 3. Maybe I'm missing someone. Those 3 for 2 spots, and will Jota start both games? I'm not fully convinced, but and especially if he does start against the Spurs game, like Spurs haven't been great, right? But it's still Spurs, or like it is still a big game. You know, you'd rather have Jota, say, him start against Fulham for like FPL points. So maybe the upside, and now he's already scored back-to-back 4 goals, or 2 goals, sorry. He may not get the attacking returns that we'd want to see. It's really hard to say. But in terms of forwards, if you're going to go for, would you go for Jota or Nunes? You've got to go for Jota because he's been the one starting. But okay, so those are the players that I would target. Now let's talk about captaincy. So I think there's, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the fixtures. So one screaming are, you got Salah here, Haaland here, of course. Well, after Southampton, you wouldn't say Solanke. Would you even go Solanke? Not sure. Maybe a Brighton asset, but would you really do that? But Watkins. So I think there's 3 candidates. In order, I would say is Haaland, Salah, Watkins. Haaland just being a monster. Him, like Jota, back-to-back 2 goals. Didn't score in the FA Cup, which means he's due one, unfortunately. He's has a chance to score a few against Arsenal. Hopefully not, but you have to be realistic, I guess. Then Salah is probably boring, obvious picks, but against West Ham, he is their main man. Is he on penalties? Now, that would be interesting. If they get a penalty, who would be on penalties? That if, say, well, depending who gets penalties, though that player could get a better sort of value in FPL. But for now, let's assume Klopp will have faith in Salah. Salah will then be on penalties. He's their best player. That's who you'd want to target. Watkins, his form's been so good. Playing against Fulham. Fulham are a good team though, however, but Aston Villa have just been pretty good. So, and he's got the form. Those three are my top picks. I reckon I'll go Haaland. Okay, so then what's the plan for my team? So let's have a look at how my team's looking in terms of what I'm starting with and how am I doing it. I've currently got Kepa as my goalkeeper. That was always my plan for when I brought in Ederson, that I wouldn't start him against Arsenal, because I believe Arsenal will score against Man City. So this would be my starting. But the thing is, like, even if I believe Arsenal will score against Man City, do I think it's Martinelli? He's been one of the form players as well, to be honest. But there is a chance that, let's say, I don't start him for... When I start, sure. Well, if I keep Kane for this week, then I'd start Fernandes. So this would be my team. So then it becomes a choice of Martinelli or Fernandes. If I start Fernandes, then maybe I'll do Ederson as well. Just because if I'm starting Martinelli, I shouldn't start Ederson, basically. But for now, what I would do is Martinelli and Kepa. Right. Captain, Haaland. I think vice captain, I would actually put it on probably Watkins, actually. Right. But it's the transfers, whether I do that. So I think looking for my plan, looking at Game Week 34, I will have, let's count, 1 in terms of double Game Week players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. I think I'll probably also start Trippier that week, because actually they have quite a good fixture against Southampton. After them playing Arsenal, maybe it's not a good fixture, but probably start with Trippier. So that means I have... So the 2 transfers I want to make by Game Week 34, basically I'm targeting 2 double Game Week 34 players. I haven't got Salah. It feels like I need Salah. So the obvious player to get rid of, Martinelli. Whether it's this week or next week, I'm not sure, but basically I just have to look at the funds. Then, yeah. If I bring in Salah, I have to get rid of Kane. And so let's look at the watch list. And then maybe bring Jota and then take Watkins out for... Is there any 5.2 that I'd actually want? Forwards. 5.2, let's say 5.1. Not particularly, so I would just go for the cheapest, which is this guy. I believe, yes. So in Game Week 34, so it says -8, but if I saved my transfer, it would be -4, and I would do Salah, Jota. That's what I'd want to do. I'd want to get Trent, but I can't make the finances work because I have to get rid of Kane to make the money. Fernandes is an interesting player because he has been playing in a deeper role, which means his attacking returns are less likely. Eriksen is now fit. So United, recently they've done a Casemiro, Fernandes midfield, and then Sabitzer, which could be an interesting pick as like their 10, scoring their goals. And Sabitzer has shown he can score goals for Leipzig. But I think they're starting Man United midfield 3 could mean Fernandes will be in the 10 instead. Then you have Casemiro and Eriksen as their more deep-lying playmaker. If that is the case, then Fernandez's upside becomes higher. But also, either way, he hasn't returned so long, which has been bad because I've owned him for these four games, maybe. But I think it means he's due a goal. He's due a goal. And most likely will happen in this double game week. Taking a hit or even just taking him out just doesn't make sense, I think. Especially because what helps is Spurs are playing Liverpool, which is why getting rid of Kane makes sense. So Salah, Jota, Lyles is probably the three players I'm going to target to take a -4 to set up for game week 34, which will mean I'll have 10 double game week players. I maybe would take another hit to get another Man City players because it just feels silly to not have 3 Man City players. But if this is the case, then what I could do for this week is take is to take this hit. So just bringing Salah this week because Martinelli against City is less attractive than Salah against West Ham. Which is probably, if I do a transfer, this is probably what I'm going to do. There is an alternative, which is, I wouldn't do this for this week then. If I want that third Man City player, I can bring Grealish and bring Jota and not take a -4. Keep Watkins on the bench, not have Salah. Now that's the risk. Is it a risk worth taking? I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, because I think the thing is I'd want Salah long term. But this is attractive because I don't need to take a -4 because, yeah. And actually, I could bring in Grealish this week and still... But yeah, so I think I'm going to most likely keep my transfer. But if not, I will bring in Salah because I do want Salah in eventually. Makes sense with his double game week coming up against West Ham. I just think, though, because he's returned... Oh, Greenwood is cheaper. Because he's returned so many times... Salah, recently, maybe he's due a blank. And can I ride that and just try Martinelli, keep Kane, get some updated information and then target the players then. But yeah, okay. So that was my roundup preview for Game Week 33. I think Game Week 33 is basically like everyone just waiting for Game Week 34 because that's going to be such a fun week. But hopefully that's being helpful. And see you for next video.